7 minutes before 3 p.m. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with Nedbank Business Nedbank Business Watch. I beg your pardon. I have Zibu Tembe, Treasury Dealer with Nedbank Eswatini, to hone in on today's financial rates. Welcome to the program. Very lovely to have you on the show. Let's start by looking at today's foreign exchange trends. I think the first question that I'd love to ask is the factors influencing the slight increase in the USD SRL today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Sfiso, and good afternoon to all your viewers. As you've mentioned, there is a strengthening of the ZAR that we're observing, and we've been observing for the week, and it's reflected in the figures. Currently, the US dollar against the SZL is trading at 18.0757. The euro against the SZL trading at 19.5517, and the pound at 23.1299. And we've seen strengthening in the ZAR against all major currencies. Started on Friday after US jobs data was published, and it came in quite soft. So there was an increase in the unemployment rate, and there was a decrease in the jobs growth rate. So obviously that then affected the US dollar, and the ZAR benefited from that. We saw further strengthening yesterday as the markets anxiously awaited a speech by the US Fed chair to Congress to get cues on what the expectations for interest rate cuts are. And he indicated that at the moment the Fed is uncomfortable to cut interest rates, but that's just right now.
Yeah.
Last week he had indicated that the US is on a deflationary path. So this indicates then to the market that if we're on a deflationary path, the Fed just needs a little bit more data to be comfortable to cut interest rates.
Yeah.
And the expectation is that in the short term, interest rates might be cut.
Okay.
Yeah.
The graphic just removed there. I wanted to hone in on the UK elections and how they are affecting maybe, say, investor sentiment there, and how that affects on the numbers that we're seeing today.
Yeah, thank you, Swiss. So that's a good question. So we know that the UK held their parliamentary elections on Thursday last week, and on Friday we then saw the pound strengthen against the rand slightly, because for the first time in 14 years the Conservative Party was unseated by the Labour Party, and it's just an interesting time in terms of elections globally, because more than 60 countries are holding elections this year, and it's interesting to see the changes. We initially saw them with our neighboring country, South Africa, a few weeks ago, and now we're seeing it in the UK, and we're expecting to see it going forward.
All right. I want us to get into commodities. Am I correct? But it's just simple yes or no answer here. Am I correct by saying that we are seeing gold prices rising?
You are correct.
Okay, then what implications does that have, say, maybe on local investors as well as commodity-based businesses?
So gold prices rising mean that investors would want to invest more in gold.
Right.
But you'll have noticed that there was a huge spike in gold prices on Friday, which then investors took advantage of and wanted to lock in their rate. But that then makes the rate decrease, because if you're locking in your rate, then the rate of gold, or the price of gold, then stabilizes. So that's what we then saw this week. The price of gold is slightly stabilizing. It did have a huge spike on Friday.
Brent crude per barrel also on the green there, 0.19% up there. What could you tell us about that in terms of, that increase and its potential effects on oil costs locally?
Okay, so the price of oil is increasing slightly, but on a week-long trend, it is slightly decreasing. You'll remember last week, I think we're trading at about $86, $87 per barrel, and that was because there were fears around a hurricane that was going to affect the Texas area. This hurricane has subsequently dissipated, and now there is comfort that the hurricane will no longer affect supply of oil. So the oil price is now also stabilizing, which means if there isn't too much of an increase in the oil price, then the expectation is that fuel might be under control.
It's really interesting. Economics are really interesting. We've spoken about how politics affect it, but now hurricane as well. But literally everything can have an effect on it. Let's look at equities performances today. Not too sure if we have enough time to look at all these indices, but we are seeing the S&P 500 there and the FTSE indices show contrasting movements today. What are the underlying reasons for these rather shifts?
So in the interest of time, I think what I'd also like to point out is that the S&P 500, which is in the green right now, has been performing really well due to tech companies and AI companies such as Microsoft, Nvidia, and yesterday it broke the 5,590 level,
Wow.
which is for the first time.
Yeah.
So it's performing really well. FTSE 100 and JSE All Share Index are also quite stable, but let's see what happens with the US inflation data that'll come out tomorrow.
Okay. Not too sure if we've covered everything there with regards of the numbers that we have today, with the rates that we have today. I assume that we have. So I want to thank you for the insights that you have provided today. And I also want to thank most importantly, I'm sorry that I'm saying most importantly, but I think most importantly to you, the viewer, for staying with us on Nedbank Business Watch today. Please stay tuned for other programs that Eswatini TV offers you today. Have a really, really lovely afternoon. And